When someone tried to get you fired, but you have a reverse card, by user wordroll. This incident blew up in March 2021, in the middle of lockdowns and stuff. It would probably be recognizable to people I work with, hopefully they don't read this thread haha. It's a story about someone whose ambition was bigger than their ethics, and the law, and it coming back to bite them. It's a bit long, sorry. TLDR at the bottom. At the time, I was working as a manager in a mid-sized business. While I was there, I was assigned a new member to my team. I'll call her Evil. Evil was in her mid-20s, and was pretty fresh out of college. She was the kind of person who could talk your ear off about all of her ideas and plans and what she was working on, but never really seemed to have anything to show for it. When I talked to her about clients complaining that she wasn't getting back to them, she would always have an excuse about how difficult they were, how snowed under she was and how she had written an email but it must have gotten lost in spam. So on and so forth. Basically never her fault. It got to the point where after one of our monthly meetings I called her in and explained that if she couldn't get her tasks done she needed to let us know so we could help delegate resources to make sure things weren't slipping through the cracks. I'll admit, I was pretty direct. Her performance was impacting the whole team, and my job was literally to keep the team on track. I get that people can be under pressure, that there can be stuff going on at home which impacts work and that sometimes people need a bit of help, but if every time I ask about a project you say yep, everything's good. I've got it under control, and then it all falls apart and your only response is to blame the client, we have a problem. I explained that I wasn't going to start formal performance management or anything like that, but from now on I'd like her to check in with me on Monday mornings for 10 minutes to go over objectives for the week and to check if she needed support with any of her clients. I know it isn't fun to be micromanaged, so I tried to keep these check-ins short and mostly just offer assistance on stuff. She clearly hated my guts though, and apparently was hatching her own ProRevenge. Now part of my role included use of a purchasing card, which wasn't in my name but I had access to. I was given the card to basically make small purchases for the office or spend up to $500 on clients. The card was kept in an office I shared with another team manager, where we both could access it when we needed it. One day I get a call from accounts asking about a few abnormal purchases on the card. A Photoshop subscription, a couple of Uber Eats orders, an HBO subscription etc. I say I don't know anything about them and they should check with the other team manager. Apparently the other team manager didn't know anything about them either, because after the weekend I get called into the big boss's office. After my colleague and I had denied involvement, accounts had started calling Adobe and Uber and stuff to find out where the transactions were coming from. They said that not only were the accounts in my name, they were registered to an email address with my name in it too, e.gword.roll3@domain.com or something. I can't describe what it felt like to be in that meeting. I felt physically sick. I couldn't work out what was happening. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was about to get fired and I couldn't understand how that was even possible. The director was going on about how access to the card was a privilege and that I had signed an agreement about appropriate use and so on and so forth. I denied that I had been using it inappropriately, and the boss listened but I could tell he wasn't that convinced. To be honest, in my head I was gaslighting myself and worrying that I had somehow saved the card in Google and maybe my wife had been accidentally using it or something. It was terrible, and I found myself apologizing and saying I don't know how this happened, I assure you that I know that none of those expenses are appropriate uses of company funds, there must have been some kind of mistake, can I please have the details and look into it etc. etc. When I finally got out of that office, job and still intact, barely, Evil was waiting for me at my office door. She was grinning from ear to ear and sweetly explained she had been waiting for our morning meeting. I told her something had come up and we'd do the meeting tomorrow, and she said, "Oh, will you be in tomorrow?" Confused, because I didn't know I was in a ProRevenge thread at the time, I just replied, "Yes, why would I not be in tomorrow?" And she just sipped her tea and said, "Oh, no reason," turned around and went back to her desk. Something felt off, but I was still worrying about what had happened with the boss, so I spent the next couple of hours calling my wife, calling Adobe, and doing the same legwork that accounts had done. It became very obvious that someone had been using my name and the company card to spend a bunch of money online. Had I been hacked or something? Personal info on the dark web and these hackers just really wanted Photoshop and Wendy's delivered? It was the Uber Eats that was her undoing. After getting on the phone and talking through what had gone on, and obviously giving my name for the account and everything, the fellow on the phone told me where the food had been delivered. It was in our city, which made me rule out straight away any notion of my data being sold online or something. Now I was suspicious, and pissed. I don't like to think the worst of people, but now I was. Listening to my gut, I pulled up Evil's employee information and checked her address. I pulled it up on Google Maps, dropped a pin on her place and then looked for the address Uber Eats had given me. It was the corner of her effing block. I was furious. When she left work for the day, I got IT to give me access to her laptop. Sure enough, when I opened up her domain.com account, under her listed accounts was word.roll3@domain.com. There were some things she had been smart about. The IP address she had been using was the office, which would have tied back to me. She had even had the food delivered to a different address. She had even made a fake email address. But saving her passwords on a work computer was a mistake. I called the boss that night and explained what I had found, and kept the IT guy with me to support the fact that I hadn't just logged into her computer and made it all up. The next day the boss called her into the office and fired her so bad there were red trucks lining up outside the building. When she teary-eyed left his office, I made sure I was standing in the hall sipping a cup of tea. It had gotten cold while I waited for her, but still tasted sweet. I hope she went home that night, because if she did she would have received some nice goodbye Wendy's delivered by Uber Eats. Paid for on my personal card, of course. Revenge and justice can be the same thing, right? In the end she was fired. The boss apologized and we were on good terms when I left in October for a new gig. She never apologized and I haven't seen her since. The boss decided not to get police involved and neither did I, just didn't want the hassle. TLDR, one of my fellow employees steals a company card and starts making Uber Eats and other purchases in my name to get me fired. I find her out, and get her fired and send her some going away Wendy's to help her out the door. Getting justice internationally for a man who got away with sexual assault back home, by user Bubble. Hello all. I was going to post this in Petty Revenge, but upon reading their rules, and their link here, it was clear this belongs here. No names mentioned, and airport locations changed. His destination was Germany though. So this was the June of 2011 that this happened over the course of just one day. One of our family friends had a younger sister in her early 20s, and it had later transpired her partner was being abusive to her for the previous year. Forcing himself on her, hitting her, having her phone. These were just some of the examples I can remember. But it was clear he was a horrible piece of work. She had apparently gone to the police, but they didn't take her seriously. The extent of what she may have said to them is totally unclear. On the day this happened, he had woken up early having packed a suitcase the night before. He told her he was going away with the boys for a week, he wanted her phone to take with him, and a fight broke out and he ended up punching her, but she was able to kick him fairly hard in the crotch, leaving him crying and in agony, and she took the chance and ran out the house they rented. He evidently left some time later and went off to Manchester Airport for his 5:30 p.m. flight to Berlin. She was seen by my cousin's friend sat in McDonald's with a hoodie on trying to cover her face, which was unusual for her to do. Seeing her in a bit of a state, the friend immediately called my cousin who lived less than a mile away from the McDonald's and she went over. She picked her up and there was a big emotional breakdown of the details of what he had been doing. Later in the afternoon, there were 5/6 of us including the girl all at my cousin's house plotting away. We had various ideas, all of which were violent I'm sure. My cousin said she wasn't waiting for him to come back, and took the details of his flight, and proceeded to call Berlin Airport 30 minutes after the flight was scheduled to leave Manchester. She speaks near perfect German due to being with a German guy since she was 21. She gave his description, and mentioned he is walking funny as he has bags and bags of cocaine up his backside. She was hoping the kick in the crotch would impact his walk to give it credibility. There was something unique about his suitcase but I can't recall exactly what it was. Suffice to say, it would aid immensely in identifying the handful of people who would match his description of age, height, clothes, etc., leaving a particular flight. She told them he had text messaged a friend bragging he got through Manchester Airport with no issues. At best, we had hoped that they take him somewhere when he landed, and be searched etc. to disrupt the start of his holiday. Turns out, that kick in the crotch was absolutely vital, as they intercepted the man walking gingerly through the gate at Berlin as being the one who had been reported. He was strip-searched and some form of scan, and as if karma herself had stepped in, he actually had a condom up his backside with cocaine for him and his friends for the holiday. Girl in the story had no idea he was a user, so a great stroke of fortune for her here. He was arrested and accused of attempting to smuggle a lot more. They said he must have disposed of it after Manchester somewhere thinking he had been rumbled, and hadn't retrieved them all. They floated the idea of 10 years prison time, we think in an attempt to get a confession. In the end he served 1 at a prison in Germany after admitting he had smuggled the one bag and that was it, but the rumor back then was he had 1 knocked off due to some home office agreement. I have absolutely no idea if that part is true or not unfortunately. When he came back home, he relocated some 90 miles away, and I couldn't be sure of the last time I remember hearing anything new about him. We did mull the possibility that he moved away concerned he had made enemies at home, and maybe thought someone close to home had involvement in this. She also relocated, but to another city within Europe, and she has her own practice where she is a qualified grief psychologist. It isn't the sort of story we often look back on given it was born out of complete evil, but it forever reminds me that a kick in the balls really can take a man down. TLDR, man with swollen genitals goes to Germany after punching girlfriend. In a quick act of revenge, man is arrested in Germany for fake drug smuggling, which turns out to be true, and so goes to prison. My friend's uncle gets what's coming to him, by user Reddit. Hi everyone, wanna start out by saying I've been a lurker around here for some time, listened to, Red Wheel, and read a lot of stories from this subreddit. Finally I had something to post. It features me, my friend and my friend's uncle. My friend, just for context, is a bouncer at a very popular nightclub in my local town, in England, as well as a personal trainer and trains in boxing as well. I am also a bouncer along with him, and that's how we became friends due to working together. The beginning. It's a Friday night, around 10 p.m. local nightlife is booming, a extremely busy night. We've already had to stop 2 fights even though we'd only been open 2 hours and kicked out a few people. So there we are just standing talking, looking menacing. Few hours more had passed, it's about midnight at this point, making plans about having a cheat meal together, first one in 2 months, tomorrow, and having a few beers ourselves since we weren't working. Checking i.ds, turning people away, letting people in, shooting the shit and having a laugh when this small group of 4 people, 1 guy, 3 girls, all approach us, clearly had a few too many to drink, try to walk straight past us. We obviously stop them and ask for i.ds. The girls have no problem showing us straight away, but the guy, oh boy, now this is not a hate thing nor do I mean any offense with any words I'm about to say, this guy was of the LGBT and community, as he kept trying to touch my friend's chest and feel his arms. My friend kept telling him to stop or he'll have to turn him away, and if he continues to do it even after then, he will restrain him and radio for the police to come and take him away. We have a direct line to the police which we can use if any extremely violent fights break out and weapons get involved. After my friend tells this guy that, the guy says, oh so it's like that is it, tough guy, don't like the gay boy with his girlfriends, jealous you can't have them or me. Before slapping my friend across the face then blowing him a kiss. I push the guy back, to which he gets in my face and says, don't you dare touch me again. In a overly feminine and squeaky voice, before turning back to my friend and putting his finger on my friend's lips as to shush him. Then he put his hand over my friend's face and pushed his head back, saying, move aside, peasants, queen bitches trying to get through. And just as he tries to step past us, we both put our arms out, push him back again and tell him completely synchronized, you are not allowed to enter, all of you must leave the premises. The guy gets offended, his girlfriends are trying to pull him away, and he finally gives up and says, I didn't want to come here anyway. Before lighting up a cig and flipping us off. Now, you're probably wondering, wait, I thought this was ProRevenge, and featured a uncle. Well, dear reader, you are correct. And that part comes now. An hour or so passes, nothing much has happened since, so I head off to go grab us a drink each, and this exchange happened during that time. My friend is just waiting at the door when his uncle approaches with a giant group of people, about 15. Including the self-proclaimed queen bitch and one of his girlfriends. Now my friend's uncle thinks he's a big shot due to inheriting a sizable amount of money, my friend said close to £1 million, and likes to throw it around and spend it like it's nothing. Now, as said before, the gay guy and his friends were turned away earlier in the night by us, and due to that we would have to turn the whole party away unless they left them and entered without them. This is where the fun began. My friend's uncle comes up to the door and says, hey nephew, do me an favor and move out of the way for us all, to which my friend saw the gay guy and his friend and told him I can't do that, before putting his arm in the way and says, because of him and her, pointing them out, to which his uncle replies, man, don't hate him just because he's different. And my friend says, I have no problem with him because he's different. I have a problem with him because he slapped me, tried feeling me up and didn't give me his ID when he came here before. His uncle just looked at him and got close to his ear whispering, let us in, and I'll even slip you a few things for the trouble he caused you earlier, before handing him 2 small baggies of cocaine and 4 50-pound notes. Now, before my friend became a PT, boxer, and bouncer, he was sadly a drug addict. he got clean from cocaine use 2 years before changing his life completely to be who he is today and is clean still to this day for 8 years now. He allowed me to share this because he's proud of it. However, his uncle knew of his former life, hence why he tried giving him the baggies. That's when my friend took the money and the bags, pocketed the money, before handing back the baggies, then said, "No entry for any of you, please all of you leave." His uncle, clearly pissed off at not getting his own way, turned around, walked away, straight to the police officers who were patrolling around as they normally did, and immediately told them that bouncer over there refused to let us in, took my money and didn't give us any reason whatsoever. The cops approached my friend and asked him why he took money and refused to let them in, to which he said, "That man is my uncle, he's on the banned list here." He wasn't, and he tried slipping the money to me as a bribe. The officers asked him if it's true, and before his uncle could answer, I came back with our drinks, asked what the hell was going on. My friend took the drink, downed it in one, before saying to me, "Oh, it's my uncle, remember the one I told you about who inherited that money? Who thinks he's king of the world? He just tried bribing me with cocaine and money to let him and everyone here inside, with the cops right there in front of him." His uncle immediately ran at him through the cops, yelling, "You motherfu," before getting punched right in the face by my friend and getting laid out flat on his back, to which the cops then arrested his uncle. Said they saw him swing first and detained the rest of the party, who started running away one by one after calling for backup. All of them got arrested on accomplice to illegal drug possession with intent to sell charges, and when they were searched it was found they had over 100 small baggies of cocaine and marijuana within the group, which landed them all jail time. And that's how my friend got pro-revenge on his dirtbag uncle who tried using his former addiction against him. Sad part is, had the queen bitch not been there, his uncle and the rest of the group would have been let in with no issues. Oh, and the Chinese the night after was absolutely delicious, paid for by my friend's uncle and the money he slipped him. Share my personal information, pay the price, by user @gistsumegwi_56. I had a contracting gig with a financial institution. One of the rules was that I had to close my trading account and move the holdings to a new account with them. They claimed it was an SEC regulation to prevent insider trading. My team reported to the same second-line manager as the group that generated the monthly account statements, so I got to know some of them. Most were okay, but there were a few jerks. One guy, let's call him Marv, was a good friend of my cube mate, so I saw him almost every day. It was the day that they were generating the account statements, and Marv wandered in and told my cube mate that if he needed money he should ask me for a loan. He went on to explain that I had a significant gain in my portfolio that month, largely due to a nice increase in one of my holdings. My cube mate thought it was hysterical and wanted to know if I had any other hot stock tips. Apparently Marv had decided to take a peek at my monthly statement. I took him aside and said that my investments were no one's business but mine, and I would appreciate it if he stopped talking about it. He laughed it off. A month later he was back in my cube reporting that maybe I wasn't such a brilliant stock picker because one of my holdings had lost money that month. I went to my manager and complained. He said that Marv didn't report to him, so there was nothing he could do. He had a well-earned reputation for completely ignoring any problem that didn't impact him personally. So I went to Marv's manager. He said that Marv has a legitimate need to access all customer accounts. It sounded like this was just busting chops and such things were part of their company culture. If I wanted to stay around I should get used to it. And if I filed a formal complaint it would come down to the word of a contractor against a long-term employee. I realized that there wasn't much I could do, so I ignored him, but every time I made a trade, Marv was in my cube asking why I bought XYZ or sold ABC. The company had a rule that a contractor could only stay for 18 months. When my time was up, they asked me if wanted to become an employee. I declined. I had already lined up my next gig. As soon as I was out the door I closed my trading account and moved my holdings to another online broker. That prompted a call from the old broker asking why I was leaving. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable having my portfolio in the hands of a company that didn't keep my information confidential. That got his attention real fast. He asked for details, which I happily provided. I even sent him a log I had kept of every comment Marv had made, as well as my complaints to my manager and Marv's. He apologized and said that I should have contacted them sooner because they take customer confidentiality very seriously. Yet. Right. I was just a contractor and Marv was a long-term employee. I had seen other contractors criticize the company and they were immediately sacked. A few days later my holdings were transferred. I got nice letter thanking me for being a customer, and as a result of my dissatisfaction, they were waiving the transfer fee. About a month later I got call from one of my old team members. Apparently someone started an investigation. They found logs of every time Marv had accessed my account, as well as those of several other contractors. He was fired for a cause. No severance. No pension. No year-end bonus. No unemployment insurance. His boss was demoted and transferred to a different division. He got his bonus, but it was the regular employee plan, not the much nicer manager plan. Our second line suddenly retired, a week after they paid out the year-end bonuses. His replacement called in my manager and cubemate and reamed them out for not reporting this obvious breach of ethics. The entire department had to sit through a day-long refresher course on how to protect confidential customer data.